All right, I think you're up first, Dusty.
Okay. Well, I want to start with thank you all for being here. Um, it's interesting in this moment. I'm feeling, gosh, a little emotional and sentimental because this has been about a 2-year process of engaging in this process. And it's been quite a journey. And we are so honored because so many people have participated in this project. And the final product is so beautiful and meaningful and rich. And we're really excited to share it with you all. I'm going to start. I'm Justy. I'm the executive director of Siskiyou Outdoor Recreation Alliance. And my role is to open the presentation with just a brief discussion on why sustainable recreation and provide a little history about why we decided to engage in this project. And and then also want to just throw a shout out to Laurel Harkness, who is here today. She is responsible for getting South Siskiyou County into the Sierra Nevada Conservancy funding region. This project is funded by the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and South Siskiyou County is within that funding region. So we got a grant from SNC to engage in this project. So a shout out to Laurel for her hard work and vision. Without that, we would not be here today. So why sustainable recreation? Can you switch to the next slide, Phil or Katie? I've talked about this a lot in our previous presentations, but really excuse me, the heart and soul of why we're doing this project is we know that sustainable recreation planning or recreation in general intersects with a lot of the key components of vibrant communities. So we know that when people are out in nature and recreating in nature, it contributes to our health and our wellness. We know that particularly in rural communities in California, we rely on recreation for supporting our local economies. So it's a direct contributor to our local rural economic development, and we'll be getting into that later in the presentation. It intersects with education. An example would be at the Nordic Center, at the Mount Shasta Nordic Center. Schools come up throughout the season and teachers integrate their curriculum into their visits at the Nordic Center. Kids are outside, they're learning about snow and socializing in the outdoors. It intersects with stewardship. We learned a lot in this planning process that it was revealed that the community members feel very passionate about stewarding our local recreation lands. And we're going to get into that a little later in the plan as well. We know that recreation is really important because it's really fun. um, and it puts a smile on our face. And it's how we connect. It's how we connect with our friends and family in rural communities. And that's another important piece. And for a lot of us, also, it intersects with, it's part of how people's spiritual practices and cultural connections to the land. So there is depth and breadth to the importance of sustainable recreation. And I think so important for us here in South Siskiyou County, we're so unique because we are one of the places in the United States where literally you can go outside our front doors or back doors and within 10 minutes be riding world-class single track trails or gravel or road biking or sailing at a lake or backcountry skiing, ATV, moto. I mean, you name it. It's really quite special and unique. And I'm kind of spoiled now because now I'm like, if I have to drive, longer than 15 minutes to go play somewhere and recreate outside, I feel so spoiled because I get kind of complainy about it. So anyway, this is a unique area, and we are actually here to present your sustainable outdoor recreation plan to you, to our community. So I'm gonna, I guess, pass it on to Katie from here. Oh no, actually, I wanted to do some thank yous first. Yes, I thanked Laura Harkness at the beginning. We also want to thank Tuli Potts, our grant administrator from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. She has been just a key component to helping Renee and I administer this grant. We worked closely with the Shasta Trinity National Forest. They provided so much data and information. We worked with the city of Weed, city of Mount Shasta, the city of Dunsmuir, the community of McLeod, Discover Siskiyou. A lot of the images in this plan are from Discover Siskiyou, Jefferson Economic Development Institute, JEDI, the Siskiyou Economic Development Council, our district supervisor, Ed Valenzuela, the Mount Shasta Trail Association, and a whole bunch, hundreds of other volunteers and community members. So thank you to everyone for contributing to your or our community plan.
All right, thanks, Justy.
You're welcome.
Um, yes, I'm Katie Celine, Alta Planning and Design. I've been the project manager for this incredibly special and inspiring project. It's been an honor to work on this plan for the past 2 years through several rounds of community meetings and surveys. So much great work with our recreation committee partners, many of the agency and nonprofit folks that Justy was just mentioning. Um, Tons of research into the issues and priorities that emerged along the way, leading us to pull it all together into this final plan that we couldn't be more excited to share with you all this evening. So I wanted to just kind of quickly touch on some of the like buckets of work and elements that have gone into this final plan. So one of the buckets is coalition building, kind of getting folks together to collaborate and coordinate and figure out how to move these priorities forward. So some of the things that we did here, we formed a recreation committee. We had public workshops in each community, partner interviews. We had a couple of different focus groups. And then Sora has worked on convening working groups around some of the key issues that are talked about in the plan. We've also worked on mapping and documentation. So lots of research. There's appendices to our plan that have just so more information than probably anyone wants to read on this subject, but it's there as a reference. Um, we worked on identifying issues, challenges, and opportunities related to recreation, South Siskiyou County. Lots of field work, visiting a lot of these incredible special places, kind of documenting what's there, documenting what some of the big ideas for projects are, and then trail concept planning, which we'll talk a lot more about later in the presentation. And then project development, that's like really the biggest component of this, documenting all of these community-driven project ideas, over 100 that came up, and we've really like thought through and talked about each and every one way or another, and kind of winnowing those down to document the couple of like core community priorities and start to really flesh those out and prepare next steps and kind of orient everyone working on those to move forward with confidence that community is on board and that next steps are kind of clearly identified and agreed upon. And yeah, all of this is pulled together into a roadmap for regional recreation priorities. And I think through this process, a lot of momentum for ongoing collaboration. And I'm going to pass it to Renee to talk a little bit about what's happening now.
Yeah, which I am super excited to do. I'm Renee Casterline with Sora, And we really wanted to give you an idea of what has been happening. There are certainly elements of this process that have been very public facing, and people have been able to participate in community meetings, in surveys. There are other things that have been happening throughout this 2-year process too. As we heard priorities from folks early on, especially related to stewardship, we got to work on some elements there. So we have an informal meeting called Beer on the Bench, which has trail stewardship organizations and individuals coming together to talk about how we can work on taking care of our trails. It's been really great to see that group come together for a handful of meetings that have led to so many conversations and new ideas coming out of those meetings and people pursuing new projects together, which I think is really a theme for the entirety of the sustainable recreation planning process. Sora hosted the Single Track Summit this year, which brought trail stewardship organizations from around Northern California and Southern Oregon here to Mount Shasta to learn together. We spent a day in education, we spent a day on trails, so that was a really neat piece. Sora is involved in regular meetings with the Forest Service that relate to trail construction and trail stewardship, which really helps all of us work together. And the Forest Service also, I want to mention, is moving their fee proposal plan forward for a review in the fall that if it stays online, could result in the implementation of a fee program. This process has really opened us up to a number of conversations, and now Sora is talking with the Weaverville Ranger District on the forest and with the Watershed Research and Training Council out of Hayfork and Weaverville. And we're starting to look at a watershed alliance, which is really exciting. The Upper Sacramento and part of the Upper Trinity Headwaters falls into that Sierra Nevada Conservancy service area that Justy mentioned earlier. We're also looking at the Shasta and the Scott watersheds because we have this amazing nexus right out our back door. I was there this morning up on the divide. So it's really neat to see how we're opening conversations and looking at this both from a local perspective and regional. Throughout this process, we've had stakeholder meetings, Beer on the Bench being one of those. The Everett Memorial Highway and Castle Lake Road stakeholder meetings have brought conversations together from our our local supervisor, members of Mount Shasta city staff and city council, and business owners who are all interested in finding solutions to keep those roads open in the winter because they are so important to our regional economy. And um, the link is in the chat to Sora's website where all of the documents relating to this project are housed. So you can go there to find the plan, but you can also go there to find the recreation economic impact paper that Alta worked up. So you can take a look and you can read about really the details of the impact that our outdoor recreation has on our businesses and our communities. Also at work, the Siskiyou Regional Climate Collaborative is a group of stakeholders here in the county who are working with a planning firm to develop a climate resiliency plan. The Fire Safe Council of Siskiyou County also has the community wildfire and prevention plan. There are a lot of things at work here. And as we reference things tonight, and as you look at the plan, you can find a number of those resources linked on the page on SOAR's website. So we really want you to think about this plan as a resource, as you're thinking about community projects, looking at moving them forward, looking at funding, looking to learn about other plans in place here in the region. So that is what's happening now. And now I will pass it on.
Thank you. All right. Just kind of grounding us in our backyard, the place that we're talking about here. This project is all about understanding, stewarding, and investing in your backyard. And this graphic is one of my favorites that we developed as a part of this project. It's kind of a conceptual map that we've added to along the way as we've kind of crowdsourced and talked to different community members about where they like to go in all the just broad breadth of recreation activities that folks participate in South Siskiyou County. And I think this graphic would could be useful. Like if this is useful to you, like as Renee was saying, like use this as a resource, like steal from the plan, put it in other things that you're doing. If you see something in here that you want to use, like please, like that's the purpose. It's your plan, your backyard. All right. I want to talk a little bit about some of the kind of community feedback that we got as a part of this process. We divided our community engagement into three phases. The first one in spring 2024 was really a deep dive into recreation needs and opportunities. We conducted partner interviews, a survey, community workshops in each community, and had our first Sustainable Recreation Committee meeting. Then phase two was in the fall of 2024. We kind of dove deeper into the issues raised by community, worked with local businesses and project partners, and organized all the ideas that had been generated by the community in phase one, and figured out how we were going to evaluate them and prioritize them and basically winnow that down into the priority projects and programs that are in the plan. And then phase three was just this spring. We shared the plan recommendations with community members and partner agencies through the story map and survey, and then the community workshop that we had that many of you attended to understand if we're capturing the vision for sustainable recreation of the region and to identify any missing elements. And then just kind of a quick sampling, if you will, of what we heard from all of these different engagement activities and conversations that we had throughout the project. So some of the themes we heard from interviews, focus groups, and surveys. You can see a photo here from the focus group we had with recreation businesses in the region. We heard about stewardship and support for stewardship volunteering, and we really heard a shared vision for recreation in the region. We talked a lot about opportunities. Regionally, there are diverse landscapes, recreational opportunities, the proximity to such unique towns that are destinations in and of themselves, outdoor volunteer opportunities, and super engaged community members, all just such building blocks to getting things done and achieving the vision set forth in this plan. We talked about access and just a sort of constant refrain, requesting consistent year-round access to destinations and frustration over the Everett Memorial Highway closures, maintenance and emphasis from folks on maintaining existing recreation opportunities and infrastructure, particularly in kind of the Mount Shasta area where there already are a lot of opportunities. And then a couple of other ones here, more from the workshops and committee meetings. We talked about resilience and the need for infrastructure funding and fire resiliency to support sustainable tourism. We talked about relationships and the importance of building relationships and managing competing user groups, and how we could collaborate with private landowners and public landowners. We talked a lot about funding, and in the current kind of funding landscape, the importance of local funding sources and strategies like recreation fees and taxes, and that fuel reduction funding may be able to be leveraged for trail expansion. And then connectivity, a lot of interest from community members on the town to town trail connections and looking for projects that have multiple benefits and could achieve like a recreation and a transportation benefit. And then a big piece of our work. Then we kind of heard all of these needs, and then we narrowed these down into these six major focus areas of the plan. So, economic development, equitable access, climate and fire hazard mitigation, maintenance and stewardship, land ownership and access, and funding and governance. So I'll super briefly, there's so much information about these in the plan, but just to kind of orient you with a little bit of context for what these mean. For economic development, Justy talked about this at the beginning quite a bit, just the importance of recreation as an economic development strategy, and then some of the challenges, affordable housing for workers, and then talking about climate change, fire, smoke, and reduced snowpack as kind of a threat to that, this economic engine in the region. Equitable access, opportunities here around additional recreation options near Weed, Dunsmuir, and McLeod. Climate and fire hazard mitigation, some opportunities here. Leveraging increasing state and federal fuel reduction funding. So we know there's just a lot of work happening in that area and finding the synergies between recreation and fire mitigation. And then Sierra Butte's trail stewardship, they have done a ton of work in this area and trying to learn from the work that they've done. Maintenance and stewardship, so many successes to build on here, strong volunteer base, good working relationships, and high local trail building capacity and a growing supply of trail maintenance tools. And then land ownership and access, opportunities here, land owners such as Siskiyou Land Trust, lots of partnerships for securing more land for preservation and recreation. And then funding and governance. Here, challenges related to U.S. Forest Service fee proposals that have been stalled, but also a lot of opportunities as well. When we talk about governance, it's really like the bureaucracy behind getting this work done. It's like the policy. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the priority programs and policies. And I will pass it to you, Phil, for project recommendations.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So one of the big aspects of this project was generating project ideas from the community. So there was a bunch of research that Katie described that was a major aspect of the project, but also coming up with what we're going to do moving forward. And so the first couple of workshops in phase one, where our team went around to McLeod, Weed, Mount Shasta, and Dunsmuir, and we hosted workshops where we gathered project ideas from you all, and we generated over 100 project ideas to improve recreation in the region, and then we set about organizing them and prioritizing them. So a big aspect of this project was figuring out how to kind of distill the desires of the community and create a plan that points a way forward. So here's a sampling of all the projects, slightly organized into relatively where they might be located geographically. But you'll notice that there's a lot of project ideas that are either highly physical or programs. And so we spent a lot of time organizing folks' project ideas into those categories. And yeah, many people had the same idea. And so we bundled projects into larger project ideas. And this is how they came out. You can go to the next slide, Katie. So we decided that asking the community to vote on 100 projects was probably going to be too much to digest. And so we turned to the recreation committee that we had formed at the start of the project to help us whittle down the project list using criteria that we developed from our vision statement. And so looks like we have a raised hand. I don't know, Katie, if we probably want to wait for questions until the end, right?
I think if you want to ask your question in the chat.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll keep talking and then Katie, you can pause me if you want.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the Recreation Committee were asked to evaluate all 100 ideas based on how they found the project to either have major impact in these 4 areas, climate resilience, economic development, access, or multi-use, and the project's feasibility, whether it was technically feasible, if there was funding, whether or not there was a community sponsor or champion, potential for sustainability. And once we had this data, we were able to view all of the project ideas as to how much impact they might have and get a sense for how feasible they were. And so we were able to rank them, and we ended up organizing them by community. And so each community, Mount Shasta, Weed, Dunsmuir, McLeod, all had a set of top projects that we then moved into a survey. So Katie, you can go to the next slide. And so the projects that you all voted on, you voted on at a final community workshop that we hosted in May, and then also online. There's an online project survey, and we put the results of those together to come up with a community prioritization of the projects. All of the projects are listed in the plan, but we noted which ones received the most votes. You can go to the next slide. One more slide. And so here are the results of those. These are the top voted projects and programs. There are many other projects and programs that also received many votes that are in the plan, but these are the ones that we decided to spotlight and to dive in a little bit deeper, providing recommendations for next steps and a little bit more description of what those projects might entail. Because a number of the projects ideas that we received were maybe written on a Post-it note or a single sentence. And so there was a lot of work fleshing out what these ideas could be. And so these are the projects that we chose to do that for, which were the ones that received the most votes. So there are 5 top infrastructure projects. The first being one that touches on the region at large, and this is the town-to-town trails concept. For Dunsmuir, it's the Hedge Creek Falls to Mossbury Falls access project. For McLeod, the Round the Mountain route, Mount Shasta Circumnavigation Trail. For Mount Shasta, it's the Lake Siskiyou Delta Bridge project. For Weed, a Weed to Black Butte Trail. And then for programs, it's maybe no surprise, but Everett Memorial Highway road access, and then the fire mitigation and trail maintenance and development was also a top program. So we're going to go through each of these in the next couple of slides. Okay, so for the first one, the town-to-town trails concept is essentially a safe, comfortable, and family-friendly trail system of multiple different types of facilities for trails connecting the 4 towns for people walking and biking, and to connect to key recreation destinations. This idea has been kicked around for a long time. It's been built on other plans that exist out there in the world, such as the Siskiyou County Active Transportation Plan, the City of Dunsmuir's active transportation plan, and the Mount Shasta Recreation and Parks District Master Plan. This idea, we looked at all of those plans and tried to tie in this into things that were already existing. So here's a little visual that we produced. We produced one for each of the top projects. And yeah, you can go to the next slide. I think there's some more information here. We conducted a lot of research, particularly for this town-to-town trails concept, on topics that might help its implementation. It's a big idea, but it's one that is we see as worth pursuing in the long term. So we conducted research that might help its implementation, such as legal liabilities, thinking about rail with trail designs as opposed to rail to trail conversions, fire mitigation benefits, and potential evacuation routes. The map you're seeing in front of you now is based on our survey, which was super useful in developing some preliminary alignment ideas. This is a survey where folks clicked on a map and said where they like to go to recreate. And so we made sure that the proposed regional alignments that we discussed in the plan hit upon those places that people say they like to go to recreate. You can go to the next slide. And that's these here. So these are all just conceptual alignments for how you might connect the 4 towns and the major recreation destinations in South Siskiyou County. Go to the next slide. Okay, moving to the Dunsmuir Spotlight Project. The Hedge Creek Falls.
Phil, do you want to pause if Renee has anything she wants to chime in on that one?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to the town-to-town trail concept, one of the things that I wanted to share with everyone, and I've already said it, but the conversations that have happened throughout this planning process, some of those conversations have been about this town-to-town concept, and the meetings of getting people together and just sitting and talking about, who's talked with who recently, what other projects are underway, have really highlighted some opportunities that feel like the low-hanging fruit right now, that feel like the projects to pursue, to look for funding to pursue. So this plan, we really want this plan to have a lifetime, that it does work in our community. And specifically right now, the planning process itself has led to some opportunities that SORA will be looking for funding to pursue. The town-to-town trail concept, obviously, we're connecting 4 towns, so we have different segments there to work on. And throughout this process, that there's been some clarity that's come forward on, a couple of segments that look right now, because of conversations that have happened, certain relationships, certain land ownerships, segments that look like they might be possible. Because it, really is clear to us that projects will have a time when they come ripe. Sometimes they need to simmer, and sometimes they're ready. And we're looking forward to doing more work to assess some readiness on a couple of these segments. I will turn it back to you, Phil.
Thanks for that, Renee. All right, so the Dunsmuir project that received the most votes is also perhaps not a surprise, the Hedge Creek Falls to Mossbury Falls access. This is a project that's also been talked about for decades, and actually has some really good movement at the moment. The City of Dunsmuir just met with the Union Pacific Railroad on the 22nd, and there is a plan that Tom Hesseldance and Associates put together that has an alignment planned from Hedge Creek to Mossbury Falls on the west side of the Sacramento River, following the train tracks. And so there's a lot of good movement there, where UPRR is seeming like a willing participant in building out this trail. But we decided to spotlight this project anyway, because it received so much support and validation from the public, and it's not built yet. And so we think that by spotlighting this project in the plan, we can carry that momentum forward until it is built. And also we see it as an opportunity to expand on the amenities that are offered at the trailhead today. So a number of folks called for improving the existing parking lot, adding bathroom facilities, and this location is also at the north end of many active transportation connections called out in the Dunsmuir Active Transportation Plan. And so tying this major recreation destination into the planned facilities for the city of Dunsmuir would be really beneficial long term. Yeah, guess Renee, did you have anything to add?
Of course I do. This is also an opportunity to spotlight a project that is starting to look ripe. Mount Shasta Trail Association worked with Tom Hesseldins. There have been conversations going on for years about achieving this, and this is an instance, right, where this plan, we chose to highlight this project in as a way to support the city of Dunsmuir in their present effort. This is an example of this plan having a life that extends out to support other projects. The amount of community engagement that we had for this project, the documentation of that community engagement through one of the appendices to the plan, that's representative of how we see this plan going out and doing work in the community. By highlighting a project for each community and then also providing the list of scored projects, we see this plan as offering support to other organizations, jurisdictions, agencies that are pursuing project development or funding for some of the projects listed here. So we want this to go out into the world and do good work. Back to you, Phil.
All right, the McLeod Spotlight Project. So for the projects that folks voted on in McLeod, the Great Shasta Rail Trail received a ton of votes, but we opted to not spotlight that project since it already has a dedicated organization and lots of planning support behind it. Whereas this project received a lot of interest at both the community workshop and in the survey, but hasn't really had much planning efforts behind it. And so we wanted to spotlight that in the plan to help maybe jumpstart those conversations and energize the idea. So the Round the Mountain route is essentially to develop signage, maps, and other information to establish a gravel bike or non-motorized route around Mount Shasta. We also are open to the possibility of it being an OHV route. And we recognize that there might be two different elevations that would lead to vastly different routes, one at a higher altitude that would really just be for hiking, and then something at a lower altitude more oriented towards gravel biking or vehicles using a combination of forest roads. So we outlined some of the big locations that would be wise to connect to, and then also tried to pull in some information from books that have in the past talked about a route like this. Renee?
Yep, Phil wasn't even going to ask if I had anything to contribute because of course I do. This is, yeah, Michael Zanger's book has the higher elevation trail in it, and I think that this is a really interesting project in that it's something that we can see a project that may take iterations for it to develop. And, it's one of those things, Justy talked about this being a really unique place. This is a project that could have a really big impact, not just on McLeod, but Weed and Mount Shasta, as well as you look at a circumnavigation route of our 14,000-foot mountain. So it's an opportunity for us to think, or, in an iterative fashion around a project. And as we iterate, Phil had mentioned, initially signage and information. There's some problem solving on the route to do. This is something that people do already, but if we can build it out and make it clearer for folks, it has the opportunity to impact our communities in a positive way. So we're really just reinforcing the vision and the values that the community shared as we put this plan together. Back to you, Phil.
Thanks, Renee. Okay, so for Mount Shasta, there were a number of projects that we felt were project ideas from the community that were mostly located in Mount Shasta. And so it was really hard to choose one to spotlight. And in fact, there were a number of projects that received many votes in both the community survey and in the workshops. So people really wanted to see work done on the South Fork Sacramento project, Gateway Trail, Phase 2. But some of those projects already had a major champion funding or were well underway. And so the project that received a lot of votes but has stalled in past efforts was the Lake Siskiyou Delta Bridge project. And so that's one of the reasons why we chose to spotlight it. So this would be a permanent year-round bridge that would connect the 7-mile Lake Siskiyou Trail across the river delta at the northwest corner of the lake and integrate signage. So this proposed bridge crossing is already called out in the Mount Shasta Parks and Recreation Plan and is supported by several others. And yeah, it would do just that. It would be a permanent bridge to connect both sides.
And this is another one of these pieces we can look at in terms of it being an iterative process, right? There have already been so many wins around the Lake Siskiyou Trail. Yeah, I remember back in the day when there was a very different trail and didn't necessarily make its way all the way around. You know, we remember the time before the Wagon Creek Bridge was in. So this is really an example for us as in a community to see that we can do things step by step and we can continue to build until we get to the place where the vision is fulfilled. And this is a great example of that. Phil?
Yeah, another one of those major projects. I was just looking at my notes. Bunny Flat parking and amenity improvements received a lot of interest from the community, but also being spearheaded by the Forest Service, we felt like that had plenty of momentum. Okay, so moving into the Weed Spotlight project, the Weed to Black Butte Trail. This is a highly conceptual trail where it would essentially be a walking and biking trail connecting the city of Weed to Black Butte, which we recognize as a major recreation destination in the region. And we see this trail as an opportunity to connect Weed to that. There's many different places you can connect along the way, and this graphic representation here doesn't represent any specific alignment. It's purely conceptual. But yeah, I guess I'll stop there. Renee,
And
did
I'll
you want to
jump
add?
in. Yeah, this is one of the elements in the town to town piece that I'm actually really excited about, and I'm excited to share the way that this planning process has contributed to this idea. Over the course of these 2 years, there have been so many meetings that we've held, and instances in a few of those meetings where, you know, a chance conversation here and a chance conversation there has connected different projects that are either conceptual or underway and helped us recognize that there may be some possibility here with land ownership changes, with relationships. So this concept of the Weed to Black Butte Trail for me is really a prime example of how this planning process has served us well in that conversations, connections have happened that are, you know, sort of pointing the way for us to explore how we might make this possible. And that those conversations and that sort of vision for moving forward is a big win for me in this planning process. Katie, I think we're passing it to you now.
Yes, thank you. Um, yeah, so I'll talk through the kind of programmatic side. So the projects Phil was just going through are like things that are out in the world, like infrastructure or something physical. And then the next three priority programs that I'll talk through are more on the like policy side. The first one, probably no surprise to anyone on the call, is the Everett Memorial Highway and Castle Lake Winter Road access. So we know that closing this road prevents outdoor recreation trips and is really an existential threat to guide services that depend on mountain access for their business. Um, and just a real bummer on a POW day when you can't get up there. Each day the road is closed, the region loses out on a substantial amount of consumer spending, by our calculations, somewhere in the ballpark of $5,000 to $22,000 per day. And this is an area where Sora has been doing a lot of active kind of convening and organizing. And I'll pass it to Justy to say a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Katie. Yes, we Sora held a couple of community meetings with our local agencies, the Forest Service, City of Mount Shasta, the our county board of supervisor Ed Valenzuela, as well as the county public works, just to talk about some of the funding issues, and then there were also some equipment issues that the county was having the last couple of winters. But just to provide an update, the county did get a new plow, an upgraded machine, and has said that they plan to, moving forward, really prioritize the road. And now that they have that new piece of equipment, feel confident that the road plowing those roads will be prioritized. Excuse me, and they intend to do their best to keep them open. Although we are going to continue to keep the conversation open about how important it is that these roads are prioritized for winter access, and helping in whatever way we can to facilitate conversations between the city and the county and the Forest Service. How can all three come together to share resources, not even necessarily like money funding resources, which would be great at some point, but other resources such as just brainstorming ideas, perhaps sharing staff, and things like that. So the conversation is going to continue to look at ways that these three entities can share and leverage resources moving forward. So that's where we're at right now.
Thank you. The second one that I'll talk about is fire mitigation, trail maintenance and development. So wildfire smoke was identified as one of the biggest hurdles for recreation businesses, causing trip cancellations and loss of revenue. It's also definitely came up in a lot of our public engagement with just folks describing like the kind of change and impact that smoke, like during the like peak kind of summer recreation season, has affected their ability to be healthy and be outside. The trail advocates and recreation experts that we have been kind of doing research and talking to pointed to a lot of synergy and opportunities to connect fuel reduction funding to ongoing trail maintenance and development. So there's a lot of momentum on this one. A lot of like different groups are kind of actively working on this. There's a great case study and a lot of research that Sierra Butte Trails Partnership has been doing on how to build fire hardened trails and what kind of like on the ground this looks like. And so some of the next steps, supporting the Siskiyou County Fire Safe Council in revising their plan to prioritize fuel treatments that improve recreation access and emergency routes, pursuing joint funding from state programs. There's a couple different sources for that. Integrating fire resilient design into trails, as more trails are developed in the region, advancing fire adapted trail systems using fast tracking tools for climate adaptive and fuel reduction projects, and then specifically applying for CAL FIRE wildfire prevention grants um, to fund wildfire risk reduction projects. Justy, anything else you want to add about this one?
Yes. At the Single Truck Summit, we had the director of emergency services here in Siskiyou County talk about that intersection between fire mitigation and trails and also emergency access. So another thing that we're looking at as we're developing trails, how emergency access can be integrated into that, not only for fire trucks, fire access, but also medical emergency access in the event that a, a recreationist was injured in the backcountry or on our trails. So it's kind of three pieces coming together here: fire, emergency access, and recreation. And we're really inspired and sort of excited about these three concepts coming together and that there is funding available. So we'll be continuing to research and start the conversation and understand it more as we think about applying for funding.
And speaking of funding, that is our third priority kind of bucket of policy and program work, exploring local funding options, taxes, fees, and fundraising. And as someone pointed out, um, actually, I think it was Laurel Harkness who's on the call, pointed out at one of the workshops, if we do this one, we get to do everything else. Um, you need funding to get work done, and we know that federal funding is uncertain and more limited in these times. So tapping into many of the great grants at the state level in California, but then also exploring local dollars and how to work together to get some of these projects done with local funding. And we also explored and talked a lot about balancing contributions from visitors and local uh, funding from local residents and avoiding the amenity trap where residents subsidize visitor use, like trying to make sure that we're creating ways for people visiting the region to really contribute to these amenities that they're coming to use. And lots of detail in the plan about some of these promising strategies. There's tourism-based taxes, and then also kind of opt-in contributions like trail sponsorships like Adopt a Trail, point of sale donations at shops and restaurants, trailhead donation stations, flexible annual memberships, fundraisers and events, corporate major donor gifts. Um, and then lots happening now. There's the Shasta Trinity National Forest fee proposal. I'll let Justy talk a little bit more about that. And then next steps, there's a lot of momentum around this kind of bucket of work as well. And the Sustainable Recreation Committee is planning to continue to meet, and this is going to be one of the like top priorities that they're planning to discuss and kind of strategize next steps around this. And yeah, doing any of these is going to really require a lot of collaboration and political will and community support. But I think, yeah, it definitely emerged as a community priority as well as a necessity that many of our partners brought up that we wanted to provide as many concrete next steps as possible. Justy, yeah, anything
Yeah,
to add there?
I guess the latest update, and I know Renee mentioned this, is that the next step is for the Forest Service fee proposal to be approved by a RAC committee. And that's been on hold because Siskiyou County hasn't had a full quorum. So they've found another RAC committee. I believe it might be not even a Forest Service committee, not that any of this really matters. I think it might be out of the Klamath. And they are planning on meeting in the fall of 2025, at which point, if they do meet, the funding is there for them to meet, and the project is approved, then implementation would be in 2026. And what this would do is could raise up to, wow, excuse me, that was a big lightning bolt. Excuse me, that was shocking. Um, uh, so again, an estimated revenue of $875,000 a year. And some of that funding would be allocated towards road maintenance for the Castle Lake and Everett Memorial Highways. There are some people I just wanted to say in the community that don't necessarily agree with this fee proposal. They're concerned that implementing a fee will have a negative impact on people who can't afford to purchase a pass. They're saying the Forest Service is estimating that the pass could be up to $60 a year. It would be an annual fee that would provide access to multiple trailheads within the forest. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that there are some people who struggle with this idea, and also people who are very supportive of the concept. And it would bring a fair amount of revenue to the forest, and again, support both the Castle Lake and Everett plowing issues.
And one final piece that I'll mention before I pass it over to Justy to kind of wrap up our presentation. We wanted to offer a few kind of immediate recommendations to continue the exciting momentum that has come out of this planning process. So basically three recommendations here. The first one, don't lose the glue. Sora's convening role matters now more than ever. Sora has played such an important role in this project, and bringing partners together to collaborate both on the like low-hanging fruit, like just, hey, like we have this resource, you need this resource, like here you go, like you're off to getting things done, and making these connections that can lead to big changes down the road. And yeah, like their funding is not certain. Like this is, we want to really document like the important role that they play in South Siskiyou communities, and what an impact that has already had, and what an impact they will be able to have continuing to play that role moving forward. Um, and the second one is just pretty basic, but critical. Continuing the Sustainable Recreation Committee meetings. Nothing happens without coordination and collaboration in our complex world, and having those times where a lot of these key players get together and just have a conversation, kind of revisit this plan, keep kind of remembering the priorities that they have talked about and agreed to, and that having the kind of venue for those conversations has already been having results. And we definitely recommend continuing that work together. And then the last one, prioritizing and expanding trail stewardship. This is just one of the top community priorities, and a place that there already is a lot of local capacity. And by just continuing the momentum and delivering current like commitments and projects that are underway, is just going to strengthen the partnerships between all of the groups working in recreation in the region, continue to demonstrate the ability to deliver big projects, That's important for applying for grants and also respond to one of the big priorities that the community has. And I will pass it to Renee to talk about how to get involved.
Thanks, Katie. I imagine everyone in Mount Shasta can hear the massive thunderstorm that's happening right now. Um, Ways to get involved. So for starters, we've talked about way we see this plan moving forward into the community. So the first thing we want you to do is share this with your friends, make use of it in the organizations that you work or volunteer with, and have conversations about it. This is a powerful, useful tool in project development and seeking funding, as it demonstrates so much community input and so much community guidance. You can also advocate for your favorite project. A lot of that can be having conversations with people in your community. Really, the importance of connecting either with folks at the city level or the agency level, having conversations, finding out what you can do to move things forward is a really important piece. And I feel like sometimes, some of the bigger agencies, federal agencies like the Forest Service, that can seem sort of opaque and that there isn't a way to connect, but I really believe that there is. And that's an important piece. We mentioned the working groups that we put together for this project, but that's also another way, right? Is you get people together who are interested in a project and start working together, having conversations, talking about the shared resources, the people that you know, the ways you can move that forward. That's really powerful. And we also just want to encourage you to follow Sora on our social media, sign up for our email if you haven't already, because that is a way not only for you to learn about things that are coming up. We do have a number of trail stewardship days that we're planning, but also for you to hear about things as this work continues, as we look to some of these projects and what we can work on in the future. So really want everyone to feel encouraged and empowered to believe that you can be involved and that you can make an impact. And I know a lot of the folks who are on the call here tonight, you're doing that already. So please keep doing that. And thank you all for being a part of this. Handing it back to you guys.
And I think, Justy, you were going to close us out here.
Sure. And I wanted to reiterate something that Katie said earlier, which is the plan can be a grant writing resource. So if there are any grant writers out there, or people who are involved with organizations that have ideas to start a project, use Sora as a resource, reach out to us. We are well connected and are always happy to talk about ideas, share ideas. And then, like I said, this is a 10-page plan document with so much data and information that can be used for grant writing purposes. So as Katie said earlier, cut and paste or copy and paste as much as you want. We want everyone to use this as much as they need. So I want to thank you all for being here and again, give a big shout out to Tuli Potts, our local grant manager from Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and Sierra Nevada Conservancy for believing in us and providing the funding for this project. And Dante and Courtney, Giro Denango, they did a lot of outreach for us. They're Sora employees. Bryson Schrader, another Sora team member, and Jason Young from Discover Siskiyou captured a lot of the images in the beautiful, our beautiful plan. And then Nathan Johnston from Groundwork Lab, he facilitated a lot of our public meetings. And he's just so talented and a wonderful community member. And then again, all the participants. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm going to pass it over to Katie because I think we can be available. We've got time to answer questions.
And I'm going to stop the recording
Okay.
while we answer questions.